So, people are finally starting to realize how screwed we are in the NBA. See, about a week ago, we made a video on this channel talking about the Clippers, how bad they're playing, and just overall how much of a disappointment it is for them to find themselves at the bottom of the Western Conference. But then we zoomed out a little bit and we talked about the implications and the ramifications about the Clippers being this bad, because as we probably all remember, about 5-6 years ago, the Clippers had this brilliant idea to trade for Paul George so they can secure Kawhi Leonard. In the process of doing so, they gave up not just Danilo Gallinari and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to OKC, but a slew of draft capital. And the last pick in that trade just so happens to be this upcoming draft, and it's an unprotected pick going to an OKC team that's on pace to not only win 70 games, but one of the greatest defenses of all time with one of the greatest net ratings of all time, and they're able to accomplish this so far this season without their second best player playing a single minute of basketball yet. And that team now, because how poorly the Clippers are playing, are more than likely going to get a top 5 pick. And now everybody's now starting to realize, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And even though I am happy that we were about a week early on this story, I'm here to tell you, because people don't really understand what's going on, they only got a fraction of what's about to happen in the league. Because not only is it going to continue to get worse in terms of how much better OKC potentially can become, but there's like 5 things that have occurred in the NBA over the past 5 to 6 years that have serious ramifications for everybody in the league because how stupid some general managers were. And it's about time we call them out. But before we go into the other teams, let's first stay with the Clippers and Thunder, because for whatever reason, y'all just believe that this is just a 1-year thing. People are under the assumption that, oh, okay, well, after this season, the Clippers will suck. And then after they are sucking and they'll give a pick over to the Thunder, they can just move on with their franchise and get rid of old players and rebuild. No, because see, the Clippers, they don't have any say-so of any of their picks until 2030. And when I say any, I also mean first and second. Now, how is that even possible? We know what's going to happen to next year's draft pick. That's going to go to OKC. Well, the 2027, 2028, and 2029 first round pick, all are gone because they wanted James Harden. See, Harden, when he was traded from Philly to LA, the Clippers said, hey, we'll give you a 2028 unprotected first round pick and we'll give you a 2029 pick swap. So now all of that is going to Philly. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, that's only just 2. What happened to 2027? Sam Presti picked up the phone and he said, I want in on this trade. And you damn right, these dumbasses said, you know what, Sam? You got yourself a deal. Even though you have enough picks, even though we really shouldn't be trading with you, we're going to give you a Clippers pick swap in 2027. So the Clippers are not only going to give an unprotected first round pick in next year's draft class, but they're going to do it in 2027 as well with a pick swap. Think about what I just said. Let's zoom out for a second. In the attempt to build a team that features Paul George and James Harden, they traded away a 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. And in the process of doing so, they gave up Shai, and one of the draft picks turned out to be J-Dub. Another draft pick that eventually went back to Miami turned out to be Jaime Jaquez. And then they also still have to give up a 2026 unprotected first round pick and a 2027 pick swap, both going to OKC. Shai is crazy enough, but Shai on top of all of that draft capital is crazier, because now you're not only helping out OKC, but you're also helping out Philly as well. Philly, who's looking for it out, looking for a way to move off of Joel Embiid. Now they have a runway to do so because how incompetent that franchise has been. But not enough people talk about it. And if you think that's all, it gets worse. When people go to Tankathon and they do the little draft simulator and they have so much fun, oh my God, the Clippers pick going to OKC. They fail to explain to people, how is it possible that OKC has 3 more first round picks? How is that possible? One of which are the Utah Jazz. Another one is from Philly. How is that possible? Well, I'll explain it. They got the Utah Jazz pick because several years ago, when Derek Favors was overpaid, they said, hey, we'll take on Derek Favors. All you got to do is just give us an unprotected first round pick and, get some slight protections on it, but eventually we'll just push the pick all the way down to 2026. How did they get the Philly pick? They did the exact same thing. Al Horford getting paid way too much money. They said, hey, we'll take Al Horford's bad contract. You all get Danny Green and T. Ferg. And in return, just give us a first round pick. And here it is now. This upcoming year, all 3 of them are about to be conveyed in the first round to a team that, again, is on pace to be historic. Historic. that's just one situation. The other one is another team that for whatever reason deems it necessary to help build out all these other rosters, and they are the Dallas Mavericks. See, again, people are failing to understand the true implications and ramifications of trading Luka Doncic, because Dallas, they're in a position where after this upcoming year in 2026, they don't have a say-so in their draft capital until 2031. And because of this reality, this is a huge reason why everyone who was sitting there yapping off and trying to be a contrarian about, oh, I don't know, I really think Nico really did a really good job. Please stop. You have no idea what you're talking about. Nico Harrison coming out and saying that, oh man, we have a 3 to 4 year window to win a championship made no sense, because in the attempt to build a team around Luka, he traded away draft capital dating all the way to 2030. That's outside of the 3 to 4 year window. So how exactly did we get to this conclusion? Well, in 2027, that first round pick is going to Charlotte because they traded to get PJ Washington. In 2029, that pick is going to either Brooklyn or Houston because they got Kyrie Irving. And then in 2030, that first round pick is more than likely going to the San Antonio Spurs because that was a part of a 3-team trade with San Antonio, Dallas, and Boston when Dallas was pursuing Grant Williams. Now, if that's not enough for you, think about what I just said. I said 2027 Charlotte, 2029 Brooklyn or Houston, depending on what's going to happen. 2030 more than likely going to San Antonio. You may be thinking, if you're really smart enough, you may be thinking to yourself, hello, what happened in 2028? Take a wild guess. Take a wild guess. Yeah. Yep. OKC, yes. Nico Harrison, and this is like the dumbest trade out of everything because it literally shows why trading Luka made no sense. Nico Harrison, right after trading for PJ Washington, got a phone call from Sam Presti potentially, and Presti said, "Hey man, I have a first rounder in 2024 that you could potentially have. It has a lot of protections on it, and it turned out to be Isaiah Cooler, and they didn't even get him. But how about I throw you the possibility of getting this first round pick in 2024 for us to do a pick swap in 2028. The only rhyme or reason why you would do that is because in your mind, you thought to yourself, well, we're going to be better than them in 2028. So that could turn out to be a favorable draft pick for us. And so then you made that trade. But if you're going to make a trade in 2028 for a pick swap for OKC of all teams, and you think you're going to be better than them, why would you make that trade if you then are going to turn around and then claim a couple years later, oh, well, we're going to have a 3 to 4 year window? That's why it doesn't make any sense. You traded away a pick that is right at the cusp of this 3 to 4 year window to OKC when you thought that you were going to be better than them anyway. But then you're saying you only have a 3 to 4 year window. Why would you close yourself to a window that no longer encompasses all of the draft capital that you traded away? It makes no sense. But Dallas now is not only on the brink of helping out OKC, and OKC don't need no more help, but now they're also on the brink of helping out the San Antonio Spurs with Wemby. Are you crazy? So when people sit out there and say, well, I don't know, should they really blow it up? Yes, they need to blow it up. That's 2. Here's a third. Dallas is not the only team that's helping out the San Antonio Spurs. And hopefully this one won't be as monumental as the first 2, but any team helping out a roster that features Victor Wembanyama is ridiculous. This upcoming draft class, if Atlanta starts to tank, is going to get scary. But this upcoming draft class, the Spurs are going to have a pick swap from Atlanta because of the DeJounte Murray trade. So they have potentially, and Atlanta could go either way so far. They could get a top pick in this upcoming draft, again, a class that is one of the most talented in the last 20 years from Atlanta. Then on top of that, in 2027, they receive an unprotected first round pick from Atlanta, again, from the DeJounte Murray trade. So there's 2 picks. Then we go to 2028 where they have a pick swap from the Derek White trade from Boston. In Boston right now, cross your fingers and hope that Jason Tatum comes back and he looks like at least a good enough player to keep them afloat. Because if Boston starts tanking, if Jason Tatum comes back and he's not good enough and they just start tanking, my goodness, they could get a pick swap from Boston. But it doesn't stop there. In 2030, like we said before, you get the Dallas Mavericks pick. And then in 2031, you get a pick swap from the Sacramento Kings. How they get it? Because DeMar DeRozan got sent to Sacramento. Sacramento sent Harrison Barnes to San Antonio. And in the process of doing so, Sacramento deemed it necessary to give them a pick on top of that. It's not enough that Harrison Barnes is actually playing out of his mind, but you gave them a pick on top. You gave them a pick swap, and now you're telling me Sacramento is on the brink of having to do another rebuild, and we already know that Sacramento, bro, they ain't never good. So you're telling me Sacramento, Dallas, Boston, and Atlanta, 4 teams could potentially be sending high draft capital to a team that features Victor Wembanyama. That's crazy. That's really crazy. That's 3. Here's 4. This one came very recent. Over the offseason, and we talked about this, I believe, in a couple of videos ago, but over the offseason, the Pelicans had this bright idea. They decided to trade away the 2026 first-round pick from the Indiana Pacers back to Indiana, and they did this in the middle of the finals. As we all know, a few days later, Hallie tears his Achilles. He's now out for the entire year, and here we are now, about 15, 16 games into the regular season, and the Pacers are one of the worst teams in the NBA. They're like tied for the second worst record in the league. So that right there will without a doubt be a top 4 pick if we continue down this path, but it somehow gets worse. In return, what they received was the Pacers 2025 first round pick. And what the Pelicans did with that is, hey, we're going to trade the Pacers 2025 first round pick and our own 2026 first round pick to the Atlanta Hawks to move up in the 2025 draft class to receive Derek Queen. Now, shout out to Derek Queen. He's been playing amazing, much better than I think a lot of people thought he was going to be early on in his career. And shout out to Joe Dumars because he definitely scouted him out correctly. However, Derek Queen is not impactful enough to justify moving up in the draft if it costs next year's first round pick, especially because the team that's tied with the Indiana Pacers for the second worst record in the NBA are the New Orleans Pelicans. So you're telling me about what? 6 months ago, the Pelicans would have had not just 1, but 2 draft picks that would have undeniably been top 4 selections. And again, one of the most talented draft classes in the last 20 years. A team that desperately needs to rebuild, that desperately needs to get out of the Zion Williamson business. They desperately need to move on. You had your out, couldn't maximize on it. And so here you are now with Derek Queen. Again, Derek Queen is amazing, playing great basketball, but not good enough to justify everything that you did leading up to selecting him. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. Now 5, the Golden State Warriors. I am perplexed that not enough people talk about what's going on in Golden State. This is a team that even after trading for Jimmy Butler, which I told people was not going to be enough of a needle mover to really put them in conversations to compete at a high level, but they traded for Jimmy and they're still a piss poor offense and they're a 500 ball club. To make matters worse, bro, Curry is playing the best basketball that he has played in the past 2 to 3 years, and they still have a bad offense. And a huge reason why their offense is so bad is because of the same mistake that they I don't know what is going on with the Warriors, bro, but the mistake of not trading those draft picks several years ago will continue to haunt them. B-Pods and Kuminga are not giving them anything consistently, especially if they're not sharing the floor with either Curry or Butler to help this team out weather the storm when either Curry or Butler do not have the ability to perform at certain levels, especially Jimmy because how older he is. It's already bad enough that you gave Jimmy that contract, but on top of that, the 2 players that you have routinely just denied any trades for, and it's gotten so bad now that Kuminga is literally a couple months removed from just walking away from this team that you have to trade him while his stock is at an all-time low. It's now resulted in a team that's still yielding average results, 500. And while that's happening, all the players that you either had the opportunity to receive or you had on your team and you just didn't maximize them, all those players are playing great basketball. Players that would immediately contribute to what this team needs. Remember how B-Pods was untouchable for Lauri Markkanen? Lauri's averaging like 30 plus points right now. Great efficiency, around 6 rebounds, immediate impact on this roster. Remember how Zach LaVine, he calls too much, playing some of the best basketball of his career right now. And you had the ability to not only give Paul George that contract that you were flirting around giving him, but you also gave Jimmy Butler a ridiculous contract as well. You then also traded Chris Paul, and in the process of doing the Chris Paul trade, where you moved off of Jordan Pools, you also gave up Ryan Rollins. Ryan Rollins is over there in Milwaukee right now having a breakout season. Pascal Siakam, you missed out on that. OG Anunoby, you missed out on that. Even when it comes to what's happening right now with Wiseman, I I even made a video about it. Wiseman is already out of the league, and the reports continue to resurface, and I really didn't want to talk about it, but now it's been confirmed numerous times. Bro, the Warriors had the ability to move up in the draft to receive Anthony Edwards. The only thing the Timberwolves wanted, they wanted for the first round pick, they wanted the second round pick, and they wanted next year's draft pick that they gave up for the Andrew Wiggins transaction, and that pick turned out to be Jonathan Kuminga. So effectively, James Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga for Anthony Edwards. And the Warriors said no because they didn't like the intangibles from Edwards, but they wanted James Wiseman, who's now out of the league, and Kuminga, who is not going to be on the team after this year. Bro, the Warriors have, genuinely speaking, just screwed themselves royally over and over and over again. And if this is the roster that you believe is going to amount to anything of substance, spare me. Spare me. The amount of opportunities the Warriors have had to add real talent to this team, and they've just swung and missed left and right, it's crazy. And now, not only is Anthony Edwards out in Minnesota doing his thing, Lauri Markkanen potentially could be on the move, and if he goes to Detroit, my goodness, that team goes from a really good story to a legit title contending team. Maybe not to the status of OKC, but they could really make a lot of noise, especially in the Eastern Conference that's wide open. Zach LaVine potentially is going to be moved again. Like all these players, OG Anunoby's having some of the best basketball of his career. Pascal Siakam just went to the finals last year. For all the players that could have been moved, they all playing great. So yeah, it's a lot going on, and I know a lot of people are talking about next year's draft class, but I promise you, there have been mistakes that have been made that have real implications on what the league will look like for the next decade, and not enough people are talking about it. But yo, let me know y'all thoughts. Hopefully this video isn't too long because it's a lot of information, but I had to get this off my chest. Let me know y'all thoughts in the comment section below. Is there any mistakes that I may have missed throughout this video? I know I said a lot, but let me know. Also hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.